Welcome to Life Stories, a space for real voices, raw emotions, and the truths we often carry in silence. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like your worth was measured by what you could give rather than who you are, this story is for you. Today's episode is about quiet strength, painful awakenings, and the power of choosing yourself. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story, because sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that finally says, "No more." My name is Elena, and I suppose if you'd met me in person, quiet, composed, often dressed in black, you might not think I come from a family as loud, glittery, and exhausting as mine. But you'd be wrong. It started with a dinner invitation that arrived not as a request but as a reminder. You haven't been home in months. It's time. The message came from my mother, Deborah, and like always, it was sweetly phrased, guilt-laced, and impossible to ignore. So I went. I packed a small overnight bag and flew into Savannah from London, where I had just finished overseeing the restoration of a historic ballroom I'd acquired under my event company, Whitmore & Co. I told myself it would be a short visit. Just dinner, smile, nod, be polite, then back to my world, my peace. But the moment I stepped onto my parents' porch, the familiar ache crept in, like a muscle memory I hadn't wanted to remember. The Georgia air was heavy with humidity and the scent of jasmine and old wood. My heart clenched before I even rang the bell. Deborah opened the door, all pearls and forced charm. "Elena, darling," she chirped, kissing the air beside my cheek. "Still wearing black. I see. You know, a bit of color wouldn't kill you." I smiled politely. "Hi, Mom." My father, Martin, was already at the dinner table, half finished with his lasagna, eyes glued to his plate like it held answers to questions he'd long stopped asking. And then there was Brielle, my younger sister, sprawled on the living room chaise like she was waiting for a Vogue photographer to walk in. She wore a silky designer dress, no doubt borrowed or gifted, and a smirk that hadn't changed since we were children. Well, she said, rising to greet me with dramatic flair. "New York's favorite recluse returns. Still alphabetizing your spreadsheets, big sis?" I didn't take the bait. I just sat across from her at the long table, which was set with our mother's best china. That alone should have been a clue. In our household, that porcelain only made an appearance for holidays, family interventions, or announcements. Dinner was civil, if sterile. Mum made small talk about the weather. Dad mumbled something about traffic. Brielle, mid-meal, took a selfie, artfully angling her phone so I wouldn't appear in the frame. I chewed on my bread and reminded myself to breathe. Then Brielle stood, glass in hand, eyes gleaming. "I have something exciting to share." I knew that tone. It was the same one she used the day she pivoted from fashion design to lifestyle blogging to something she called brand manifestation. "My 33rd is around the corner," she began, "and it's going to be iconic, like Kardashian-level iconic." I paused, my wine glass halfway to my lips. "I've found the perfect rooftop in the warehouse district, Champagne Wall. Live music, drone footage, a horse-drawn carriage. Think Paris, but with better lighting." She beamed. "Total cost? Just under $150. I nearly choked. "And you," she said, pointing at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "get to make it happen." The room went still. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hesitate. I looked at Mum, waiting for her to step in. Instead, she tilted her head and said gently, "Sweetheart, it would mean so much to your sister. You've been so blessed lately. Isn't it time to give back?" My father never looked up from his plate. And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't there as a sister. I was a sponsor, a walking wallet with no right to decline. The betrayal bloomed quietly, like a bruise beneath the skin. I swallowed hard, placed my napkin on the table, and excused myself before my anger could speak for me. Later, back at my flat, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in silence. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my operations manager. "Ava, check Brielle's Instagram story. I opened it. There she was, sipping champagne with her planner. Captioned, "When your rich sister lives like she's in witness protection." Split screen beside it, a video of my car pulling into my modest driveway. Windows down, paint slightly faded. The comments poured in. OMG, she drives that? At least she's not pretending. Money doesn't buy taste. Lol. I stared at the screen. My jaw clenched. My heart throbbed. And yet, I didn't reply. I didn't post. I didn't call. I just whispered to myself. She thinks this is about a birthday. She had no idea what she'd just started. 2 days passed, and I didn't answer a single call. Not from my mother, not from Brielle, and certainly not from anyone pretending not to know what had happened. I let the silence stretch out like a rope between us, watching to see who would flinch first. Ava, my operations manager, offered to throw my phone into the Savannah River. And honestly, I considered it, but instead, I shut off notifications and buried myself in spreadsheets and zoning permits. My hands worked, but my chest remained tight. The story, that awful post, was still up, still being shared, strangers laughing at the house I chose, the car I drove, the life I built, all because I didn't flaunt wealth the way Brielle believed I should. She's not going to stop. Ava warned me, her voice low as we reviewed vendor contracts. I know, I replied, keeping my tone neutral, but she's not the one I'm worried about. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I'd seen the cracks in my family's foundation for years, beneath the manicured smiles, beneath the birthday toasts and holiday photos. But now, the rot was exposed. That afternoon, I was reviewing security updates when I noticed movement through the frosted glass of my office door. My stomach tightened. My mother didn't make appointments. She arrived like wind, unannounced. Impossible to stop. She entered with a Tupperware of banana bread and a look of practiced affection. "Still no receptionist?" she asked, placing the container on my desk like an offering. This space could be warmer, more inviting. I gave her a tight smile. "Hi, Mom." She sat, unbothered, as though she'd been invited. "You work too hard, just like your father, though he was never great with money. You get that from me." I stayed quiet. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. "I brought something for you to look at," she said lightly. Inside was a budget breakdown. At the top, Brielle's 33rd Dream Event. Halfway down, in pink highlighter, venue contribution, Elena Whitmore, $150. Confirmed. I froze. "Confirmed?" I asked, my voice slicing the air. She didn't flinch. "Sweetheart, let's not make this difficult. Brielle doesn't have that kind of money. And your father and I are on a fixed income now. You've always been the responsible one. This is just expected." There it was again. Expected. Not requested. Not discussed. Just decided. I pushed the envelope back across the desk. She humiliated me, publicly. She was being playful. She mocked my life. She's going through a phase. I stared at her. "And you're asking me to fund it?" She smiled tightly. "I'm not asking. I'm showing you the plan." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply stood, took the banana bread, and placed it in the freezer, between the frozen peas and an old bottle of vodka. It wasn't a peace offering. It was a symbol of every time they asked for more, and called it love. The morning of Brielle's party dawned golden and deceptively calm. From my office above the Whitmore estate, I watched the setup unfold on the ballroom cameras. Ivory linens, white orchids, imported candles, even a string quartet warming up near the staircase. Everything was perfectly staged, everything but the truth. She had gone ahead and booked my venue behind my back, through an external agency. No call, no email, no apology, just her name on the reservation, written like it belonged there. "She's trying to trap you," Ava had said, watching over my shoulder. "She wants it to be too late to back out. If you cancel now, you're the villain." I nodded, calm. Then we let her play queen. Let her walk straight into her own story. We documented everything. the unauthorized booking, the staff mistreatment, the printed contract with my name listed as financial guarantor. And when Brielle finally arrived at the venue, sweeping through the front doors in 5-inch heels and a white designer dress, I didn't meet her at the entrance. I waited. From the surveillance feed, I watched her throw a tantrum over tablecloths. She berated a young server whose English was imperfect. She called the florist's arrangements embarrassing, and at one point, slammed a clipboard so hard it skidded across the marble. And then Ava stepped into the frame. "This is a private venue under contract," she said, her voice firm and low. "Our team deserves to be treated with professional respect." Brielle scoffed. "Do you even know who I am?" Ava didn't miss a beat. "Do you?" Later that evening, the Cartwrights arrived, her fiancé's parents. Eloquent, refined, the kind of people who judge a person not by their style but by their substance. As they toured the ballroom, Brielle attempted to charm them with stories of grandeur and imagined connections. "Oh, the chandeliers," she said breezily. "We know the owner." That's when I descended the staircase, heels clicking on marble. I paused halfway down. She saw me, her face paled, and I smiled, just barely. "Welcome to the Whitmore estate," I said, extending my hand to her future mother-in-law. "I'm Elena Whitmore, owner, creative director." The silence that followed was delicious. They looked at Brielle, truly looked at her, for the first time. Her carefully built illusion cracked like thin glass. Eloise Cartwright smiled at me. Slow and deliberate. "You built all this?" "Brick by brick," I said softly, quietly. Later, in the hallway, Brielle collapsed against a mirrored wall and slid to the floor. Her voice shaking, her breath uneven. I didn't stop. I didn't gloat. I walked past her, tall and steady, the way no one in my family ever taught me to be. That night, I sat in my quiet kitchen, drinking tea in the dark. My father texted, "Can we talk? It's still her birthday week." That was all he had to say. Not "I'm proud of you." Not "I'm sorry." Just "Don't make waves." I called, and for the first time, I told the truth. "I'm not your redemption story. I'm not your wallet. And I'm done." Then I hung up. And it didn't break me. It freed me. Because peace doesn't arrive when others say sorry. It comes when you finally stop asking them to. And choose yourself instead. In the weeks that followed, the world didn't explode. There were no headlines, no grand apologies, no dramatic showdowns. Just silence, the kind that no longer echoed, only settled. And for the first time in my life, I didn't try to fill it. I let it be. Brielle's party was quietly cancelled. No public statements, just a vague post about creative redirection and a temporary social media break. Her voice had always been the loudest in the room. But now, the quiet said more. As for me, I kept building. The Whitmore estate has never been busier. We're booked through spring. Ava's managing inquiries from across the country, and just last week, the niece of Eloise Cartwright personally requested a tour with me. I suppose this is what peace looks like. Not fireworks, not revenge, just a slow, steady breath after years of holding it in. I don't hate my family. I just stopped asking them to see me. Because love isn't supposed to be transactional. And loyalty shouldn't mean silence. To anyone out there feeling invisible in their own life, know this: you don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes, the quietest decisions are the ones that change everything. Thank you for spending time with this story. If it touched something in you, if it reminded you that your voice, your boundaries, your peace matter, then I'm glad you're here. Subscribe to Life Stories for more honest, emotional storytelling, because your truth deserves to be heard, and maybe, just maybe, the next story will help put your feelings into words. Until next time.